Today's World Mental Health Day. Earlier on I was joined by actor Preston, who quite bravely talked about his father's suicide. The reason he wanted to talk about such a difficult subject and also his own struggles with mental health is that he wanted to help other people. Check out his story.
Thank you for joining us and talking about what's a really difficult subject. Would you like to just share your story?
Yeah, sure. 1982, I'm 12 years old, and I wake up one morning and there's a bit of kerfuffle going on downstairs, and went down to see what was going on, and my mum told me that my dad had died. Now, my dad didn't live with us, and my dad had been divorced for a couple of years, for a few years to be honest, and yeah, she told me he died, and I just went, went up to my bedroom and cried, as you would do, being 12 years old, or as anybody would. And the day progressed, and I chatted to Mum a bit about it again, and she said he killed himself. She explained to me he killed himself.
I must have been shocked.
Well, yeah, just a bit. I mean, I did my head he died of a heart attack, even though he wasn't that old. He was only 49, but that's old when you're 12.
Certainly is, yeah.
You know, sorry, that sounds silly, doesn't it? But
No,
you know what
no,
I mean.
it does.
It does
Yeah,
when
it
you're
was
that
now with
age.
spring chickens.
So, why would he kill himself? That was what went through my mind. Why would he do that? And I never, at that time, I didn't get an explanation, and there was nobody to really talk to about it. Me and my mum talked a bit, but I don't remember going into it in any depth. And I remember talking to my sister, and she said to me that he was really unwell with emphysema and angina from lots of smoking. And his last months would have been on an oxygen bottle in a chair, and that wasn't his way. Okay. So I had in my mind he'd have been dead by Christmas anyway. He died in September, and he'd been dead by Christmas anyway, in a horrible, painful way.
Yeah. Was that a comfort to you then, that maybe take some control over that situation?
Well, I suppose that getting a bit of an explanation helped.
Okay.
But as for appeasing me in any way, I don't know. My dad had killed himself, and that was what was what was there in the mind, at the front of my mind. So I lived on with that, and I accepted that, and lived by day. Went through some odd phases of thinking my dad was a coward for killing himself, which is an awful thing to say.
Grief's complex, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is, and you know, teenage years starting to kick on, dealing with emotions is hard enough as it is without dealing with such a major thing, you know, catastrophe or whatever you want to say. So 30 years anyway, go ahead, 30 years, and I'm talking to my daughter about smoking and saying, you know, I've explained to you what happened to my dad, you know, back off this, don't be smoking, you know, caught smoking, and I said, I've explained to you this and that. And one of my older brothers overheard the conversation, and he said, what are you talking about, you know, with your dad, with my dad, about dad killing himself from smoking, too much smoking? He said, that's not true. Okay. That's not what happened at all. My dad was depressed, and he pretty much said it like that.
Right, okay.
My dad was depressed.
Right, so that must have been a real shock.
Hang on, just back up a moment. You know, past 30 years, I've had this oxygen bottle explanation, and he said, well, that I was told that was my sister's explanation. I don't know whether it was what she believed true or her coping mechanism.
Right, okay.
And I can't take that away from her. However, whatever reason she had for saying it or dealing with it, that was her way, and I won't have a problem with that at all. But for 30 years, that's what I believed. But both my older brothers sat me down about a week later. I was at a wedding reception at that time, so we weren't really going to discuss it, were we?
No.
So about a week later, we sat down around a table, and they spoke to me about it, because they were a bit older than me, and they went to the pub with my dad, so they had a closer relationship than I did at 12, obviously. So, and they said, yeah, basically he was depressed, and he tried to reboot his life almost when he married again. And he was digging up for a pond in the back garden like he'd done when he was living with us. And was he trying to start again? Had he lost his way? And he got into debt as well. I don't know what debt he got into. I just know he got into certain debts. And perhaps all just got a bit too much for him, and I don't know. But I was told he killed himself as a result of that.
Of depression.
So
Thinking about myself as a 12-year-old, I suppose I didn't even give a second thought to my parents and whether or not they were happy. They were just a constant and there. Was there any signs that you thought that maybe your dad was depressed when you look back?
No, never. Not in the slightest. I wouldn't have spotted it. He was my dad. I went round to see him, went round for tea with him at his house now and again. I met him at work, sponged money off him to buy a record or something like that, like I did.
Yeah.
No signs of any trouble at all.
Right.
I saw nothing. My mum didn't mention anything, but my mum wouldn't have said anything anyway, because when they were divorced, I knew very little about it. She was very good at keeping it under wraps, so it probably wouldn't have upset me.
Yeah.
I was aware of something at the time, but that's another story.
Yeah. It almost feels like you've had two bereavements in a way. The one at the time, and then a kind of the second one of finding out that maybe things weren't.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a second bereavement. Probably wouldn't go that far. It was a bombshell.
Right, okay, yeah.
And I had to sit back and process it. I didn't dwell on it, because in my mind, well, yes, in one respect, he could have still been around.
Right.
Because he hadn't killed himself because of emphysema and suffering, and whether he'd have killed himself or not, he was going to be dead in 6 months, and that wasn't now true. What it was pure depression. He could have still been alive, possibly.
So
but you can't think like that. You can't think on ifs, buts, and coulds and maybes. I just went, well, it has happened. Process what you've just been told, but don't dwell on this. Oh, my dad could have still been here. That wouldn't have done me any good at all.
No. Was there any support for you at the time?
No.
Right. We didn't do feelings in the 80s,
No,
did we?
we didn't see counsellors.
No.
That was an American thing back then.
Right.
You'd have said, you'd have said crazy angst. They also have psychiatrists. That's what you would have been seen as. You'd have seen as some weird, crazy guy if you needed to see a psychiatrist. And now we see counsellors and we see therapists and we talk about our problems and we talk about bereavement, and we don't keep it under wraps anymore. We've discovered it's not good to keep it all in here.
Yeah.
And and when we did talk to my mum, she don't get me wrong, she wasn't like, I don't want to talk about this. It was never that at all. But I mean, it might be because I've forgotten over time. I don't remember talking about it a lot, but I don't remember her ever not letting me talk about it if I wanted to. But I don't remember going into any depth.
Right. Okay.
We just kind of got on with it, really. Sounds a bit crass, that, doesn't it? But
that's it. We are looking at different times. Earlier this year, it came out this statistic that 84 men a week take their own lives.
Right.
That's quite shocking, isn't it? That's 12 a day.
Yeah. That's upsetting, really, to think that people are taking their own lives to that extent. That's a men's statistic, a male statistic, is it?
Yeah.
No, that's upsetting. People need help, but people need to know that they need help, and that's a difficult boundary. I mean, I'm no therapist, don't get me wrong, but to admit you've got an issue is difficult. I think, because again, some people think that they're weak, letting go of the feelings. I really wish people would move on from that.
Totally.
You're not weak at all. To admit you've a problem is strength.
Very much
in my
so.
opinion.
Very much so. A few weeks ago, was at a presentation by a charity called State of Mind, and they work with, they're all ex-rugby players who work in quite male-dominated industries, and you have these blokes that are massive, talking about when they were contemplating suicide and at their lowest points, and I think it's really important for men to get out and talk about.
Well, that's a good sign. If you've got these big bruiser males and they're opening up, it is a cracking sign, and I'm really pleased to hear it. I really am. But they said it back then. You didn't have it then. And we didn't talk about it, but I've talked about it with a therapist more recently. When about 10 years ago I had anxiety issues, and I happily went to see a therapist about it. I mean, to be fair, that did take me a little bit of time to find somebody to trust to speak about it. But that was me. and I've dealt with it, and I spoke to her about it, and I said, but that was years ago when my dad died, and she stopped me in my tracks and said, no, you can't just brush that under the carpet. That's a major event in your life.
Yeah.
You lost your dad at age 12.
Yeah.
You need to talk about this. I mean, she didn't force me to speak.
No,
A therapist would
of
never
course.
force you to speak about anything.
No.
But what she encouraged was, don't brush it under the carpet. Don't think it's past, and forget about it, because that could be a catalyst
Yeah.
to where your anxieties have been coming from.
Yeah.
So I did talk about it, and you shed a tear now and again. You never ever forget,
No.
but you just learn to get on with your life. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell, to be honest.
So there's debate at the moment about how we talk about suicide, and there's the old-fashioned term is to commit suicide, and people talk around, that's a reference to suicide actually being a crime, which feels crazy these days, doesn't it? To think that you could be imprisoned for being unwell.
Yeah, the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life, but that's how it was.
Yeah, and I can understand maybe there is the point of view of people saying, well, let's not talk about this as though it still is a criminal offence, so look at different terms.
Right.
I always think when we're looking at language we use, maybe speak to the people who've been directly affected or those issues directly affected. So what's your thoughts on that?
What, and changing it to die by suicide?
Yeah, die by suicide.
Well, it's down to people's choice. I'm, for want of a better word, happy to use the word committed suicide. That's what I've grown up with. I haven't got an issue with that. But if it's happened to somebody else and they do not like that term and they refer to the person that they know has died by suicide, and that gives them, they feel more comfortable using that term.
Yeah.
Well, who am I to say they're wrong?
Yeah. Okay.
It's a choice, but don't make it suddenly that is the wrong thing to say. You cannot say that. No, I'm not. I wouldn't be happy with that. It's about what you're comfortable saying. I will say committed suicide, but if that would upset you now, because it had happened to you with a member of your family, I would say, I understand.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people avoid talking about subjects because they're scared of using the wrong words. I think I kind of feel like the intention behind what you say is often more powerful than the specifics of the words that you use. Maybe when they're written down in black and white, they're a bit harsher. But I think I would encourage people maybe to talk about things rather than worry about.
Talk about it. Yeah. I mean, but it's hard to get the bravery to talk about it. You fear that fear of saying something wrong and putting your foot in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've heard in the past it's better to say something than nothing at all, even if it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because nobody means anything malicious, do
No,
they?
not
They
at
say
all.
these things,
Not
so
at
it
all.
would be purely accidental. So it is better to sit and talk about it rather than sit on your hands and do nothing.
Yeah.
Forgive me if that sounds a bit brash.
No, and I think that's really important. I think a clear message is that if you are struggling with your mental health or if you've had a bereavement, then it's really important to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing your story.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.